Welcome in, College Baseball Central fans. This is the Best Coast Pod, and we're doing episode 1 of Beaver Talk, where we're just going to talk Beaver baseball. Pretty excited today. I'm joined here today by Pat Moen, as usual. Pat, how are we doing today?
I'm happy to be here. Happy to really dive into what some might say is my forte here with Beaver baseball.
We haven't really got to dive into it with the Best Coast Pod so much because we got 17 teams and all of the West Coast we cover here. Pretty excited about that, how that's going. But we really wanted a chance to get to talk to more people about Beaver baseball. And speaking of, we got Ryan Harlan in from Orange Media Network, sports columnist and broadcaster, does a ton of Beaver stuff. Super excited to have him today. How we doing, Ryan? Welcome in.
Doing good. Another busy of Oregon State sports. I mean, I can't complain. That's more content for me to cover and more content for Beaver Nation to enjoy. So baseball season started up. Spring football's about to start up. So it's a lot, but I enjoy it, man.
Lots to cover. Lots to cover, man. It's been just great. We love it here. Beaver Nation loves it, man. We're just going to get after it here right away. Here's what I think. 11-1, only loss coming to a top 5 Arkansas team. This baseball team is doing things the right way. Through the first 12 games, give me a grade that you got on them right now, Ryan, and then I'll shoot it to you, Pat.
Through 11 games and a loss against a really good Arkansas team with Hagen Smith, who pitched out of his mind in that game, 17 strikeouts. I'd say it's a solid B plus to about an A right there. Kind of in that range is where I kind of would give this team right now, exceeding kind of being right at expectations, I should say. And I mean, this team is rolling so far early against this non-conference schedule here so far.
Yeah, and a lot of the non-conference schedule, like we said, doesn't necessarily test the Beavers a ton right now. But every game in baseball is important, and every game you could lose in baseball. The baseball is a different game. It's not like you're going out there with tons of superior athletes and beating everybody. It's still a 9-on-9 game. You still got to pitch to get 27 outs. 11-1's a good start here. Pat, where do you rate this grading wise as far as the first start of the season here?
I definitely fall in that range that Ryan gave there, but I'm definitely on the higher end of that range. A minus if I want to be really, really kind of minute and particular about certain things. And I'm sure most Beaver fans kind of agree with the things that I would bring up, namely being the base on balls and some of the stuff that we're seeing on the defensive side of things. The fielding percentage not as high as I feel like this Beaver team has kind of made their norm in the past by just playing really good defense and pitching really well. But it's hard to argue with 11-1 with a loss coming to the top 5 team in the country with arguably their ace and maybe the nation's ace on the mound that night. So a really promising start for the Beavers, but a lot of season left for us to go, so it should be a fun one.
A lot of season left. I'm also A minus. I think that the walks are concerned. The free passes are concerned. They're going to have to clean that up when they play better competition. Those double negatives, back-to-back walks, and then a double, all of a sudden you're down. Those are things that they're going to have to figure out how to clean up a little bit. But I really am impressed by the tenacity of this staff. I mean, I know that they've thrown about 15 different arms out there. It's been really good to see some of these guys throw. There's been a lot of guys we'll talk about here in a little bit who really have stepped up in bigger roles there. And I love what they're doing this year. I know that this next weekend here against Cal State Northridge, not necessarily another test, but still a really good baseball team. So we'll see how they do here. A few injuries this year so far, giving some guys some opportunities. Doesn't appear to be anything too serious on some of them other than Jimenez, who's done for the year. Who seems to have done the most with their playing time, Pat?
For me, at the moment, I reach towards Dallas Macias. He's been a guy that last year got playing time and played quite a bit, but wasn't really able to find consistency at the plate. Batted 203, showed glimpses of power with 6 extra base hits. But he's taken that right field position over with Brady Castro being banged up from the game down in Arlington. And he had a pretty big weekend, displaying the power with his first long ball of the year and really being a catalyst for the offense this weekend, where at some points they kind of needed somebody to be that.
Yeah, and they did. They needed somebody to step up and be that guy. He just walked right into the 4-hole. He's like, sure, I'll take it over. I got this. No problem. We'll step right up and just take care of the business. And he hit his first career home run as a Beaver, so congrats to him. I was really pumped to see Dallas hit that ball. He's one of those stocky, strong kids, and he doesn't look like it necessarily. And then you see him in person, you're like, good Lord, this kid's stacked. But he can really play baseball. He's a baseball player through and through. Really excited for him getting these opportunities. Ryan, anybody else you've been seeing here, has done a ton with their playing time and just getting opportunities they probably weren't going to get if there wasn't for the injuries?
Definitely, Dallas Macias was one of them. That's for sure. Jabin Trotsky is my pick personally.
Yep.
He's seen some action here, especially in that series against North Dakota State, and he's always managed to find contact with the ball and put the ball in play. And he's been very, very good in relief too, especially during that appearance where Hainline was at DH. He looked good out there on the field as well too. So he's made the most out of his time too. A guy that's been in the system for a while, hasn't gotten really that opportunity, was banged up last year, and now is getting to show what he's capable of do in game.
Yeah, he missed all last season with elbow surgery. Really sad to see him go down there in February, right before the season started. He was down into January. Good to see him get those opportunities. He's made a lot out of them, right? He's got a couple triples. He's been out there banging the ball around, and he also has been playing great defense. It's good to get these guys opportunities right this early in the season because you need those guys to be good late in the season if you really want to make that playoff push and be a really good tournament team. Having 15, 20 guys ready to go on the staff and then in the field there is tremendous. So I like what I've seen from Craig. He's been getting more chances there. Jacob Craig's been getting those opportunities. I really think Kenan Reeder is going to be a big guy defensively down the stretch too. If they give him opportunities to play defense for this team, he's so fast, great arm. He covers a ton of ground in the outfield. I really like that he's been getting some opportunities to play out there. Easton Talt's one I'd like to see get a little bit more opportunities. There's just not a ton for him out there right now, with Tanner Smith being so dominant behind the dish at the moment, and just not a ton of outfield spot for Talt. But good to see him get opportunities. But again, it's Dallas Macias for me as well. He's the guy who's been taking care of business. He shows up, had his first career home run, hit the doubles in Arlington. He's been what we needed him to be. And with Brady Casper and McDowell out for a little while, I think both those guys are coming back. Really cool to see him step up. Ryan, who's been the biggest surprise this year so far as a Beav?
I would have to go to the pitching staff a little bit. I would say Eric Segura was a little bit of a surprise, and that was more of like he's really talented, but like the coaching staff raved a ton about him, and I really think that he wasn't necessarily my projection for getting one of those weekend roles there on Sunday. But dude's killing it as a freshman out there on the mound. Like he kind of reminds me a little bit of Max Scherzer, a little bit in the way, kind of his arm angle, way he delivers that ball. But like Segura has definitely been more of, I would say, more of a welcome surprise at that Sunday spot. That's the best way I can describe it. He's definitely been somebody that's really caught my eye this season so far.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him get the opportunity to start right away in that Sunday role. I know I talked to Tanner Smith early in the season before the season started. I talked to Rich Dorman. They both had huge things to say about this kid. And they were like, oh, most people come in, they say they're throwing 95, and we just don't believe it till we get them on the gun. Segura steps up and he's throwing 93 to 95 and he's hitting his spots. And it's just not a typical freshman arm like when you have that brought in. And, the funky delivery kind of really adds to what he does. And being the Sunday guy, he goes out there, got to throw strikes though. He still hit a few guys, still walking a few guys, freshman things, but really getting him out there for those early season starts are going to be tremendous for him down the season. And we still have guys like Jaron Hunter who can step up if something happens. And it's just tremendous to see the starting pitching. I like that one. Pat, who has been your biggest surprise so far this season?
I was almost hesitant to call it my surprise just because of how much we had heard about this guy developing over the offseason and growing and kind of turning into this ball player that grew on the offensive side to go with his stellar defensive side. For me, it's Tanner Smith. I think I thought that this was going to be more of a kind of a handoff with him and Wilson Weber going back and forth, maybe, seeing the gun one guy catch twice weekend, the next guy weekend, the other guy does it twice. But, Tanner Smith played all 4 games this weekend, which is, I reiterated on Twitter to a few folks, is kind of unheard of, even at the big league level. But the power is, I think, really what kind of stands out to me right now with Tanner Smith. He's already matched his home run total from last season. We haven't started conference play, and we've got another weekend before we do start conference play. A little bit of an asterisk there because it is like the bye weekend, like the off conference weekend for the Beavers. But not only has the defense been superb for Tanner Smith, as we kind of all knew it was. He's a top defensive catcher in the nation. But the offense is really coming around for Tanner Smith. And having him at the 8 hole is cheat code at this moment. I mean, he's performing like some guy that's batting higher in the lineup, and to be getting that production from your catcher spot, which traditionally isn't, the most well-rounded offensively. Usually those are kind of defensive specialists. The Beavers have to be thrilled with what they're getting so far in their early returns.
I know I told you this in the preseason. It might be because I love Tanner. I think he's just terrific. But I said he's a double-digit home run guy, and he has a chance of running it up there to 15. He's on pace. He's on pace. He's doing the right things. He's been hitting strikes. He's been clutch his whole career. And to see him go out there and go get these home runs now and add to it, and that home run that he hit in Arlington, I don't know if it ever came down. That ball was hammered for a
They're
ball
no
in a big league
cheapies.
ballpark.
He's getting
No.
loads of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and he hit the last one this weekend to dead center, and it still left
Yeah.
the ballpark. He has always been a middle to gap guy, so being able to see him get that home run power this year is just tremendous. So, big shout out to Tanner. Love what he does behind the dish. Love what he does with his pitching staff. But you add in the numbers now offensively is what he's adding from an 8 hitter spot. Look out! That's lights out for a lot of teams. Uh, my biggest surprise, for as much as we talked about the guy in the preseason and how good he's been, Trent Caraway with the stick, man. He came in. He just looks like he's an upperclassman kind of dude. I know he's had his struggles defensively. You're gonna get that with a freshman third baseman at this level. It's just gonna happen. You have to get used to game speed. You have to get used to ball speed. It's going to be a little growing pains with him defensively. I'm okay with that because of what he's done offensively and how he's really been clutch and shown up, and he can hit any pitcher in the country with how he's been doing. Now, I know he broke his hitting streak. Doesn't matter. Still love what the kid's been doing. I think he's tremendous. Really big things here for Trent Caraway. And what he said about turning down the offer, he said, I want to be a first day guy and going to Oregon State and being a Beaver is how you do it. And I just love what he's done. And his teammates have really embraced him. They seem to love what he's doing out there. They're helping him out and getting through this first part of the season. But no rust there. He looks like a true freshman All American to me, and I'm very impressed with what I've seen from Trent Caraway.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me with Caraway is with some of these preseason interviews he's been doing, they're asking him his goals. And I mean, obviously national championships up there, but he doesn't want to make first team all nation. He wants to be the freshman of the year, and that is his biggest goal. And I think he's well on the way to achieving that this year.
He's running down that path. He leads the Beavers in doubles, and this is a team that's been hitting like crazy, and he's leading them in doubles. It's like, wow, he's a real deal, and I think he's only going to get more RBIs when they keep him up in the top part of this lineup now. I'm really impressed by his poise also. Even when he goes out there and makes a mistake, he jumps right back out there and he's ready to make the next play. Really big things from the freshman. And another, like we talked about earlier, another freshman, Eric Segura. So we've had a couple freshmen who have really stepped up and been huge to start off this season.
Yeah, hearing Trent speak, first availability of the season, just that, like, it's the same reaction I had to Gavin Turley as a freshman, if that makes sense. Like, just hearing him speak, it's like he seems like a veteran, just being around the team, and that whole thing of him, turning down that offer. I was surprised just to kind of hear it directly from him, and I also understood it at the same time of like, man, this team is so lucky to have him here, like. With what he's done so far as a freshman, he basically said, look, like, I'm young, I'm still learning. I'm just going out there and like what I don't know. And that mindset has helped him so much in this early part of the season that like he only sky's the limit for this guy. That's the way that I see it.
Yeah. And the opportunities that the coaching staff has said, hey, you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. We're not going to eat your lunch for that. We want you to get after. We want you to play hard. We want you to do the things. Making mistakes is part of growing in this game. And you see it even with Turley last year, right? He had that big slump. They went right back to him. And, man, it just shows that this staff and they know talent. And they want these guys to be out there. They want them to get better. And they try to give them the best opportunities to be great. And it's just worked out so far this year. So I'm very impressed. Speaking of impressed, Rich Dorman told me when they were up here in Bend, he said, this is the deepest staff we've ever had at Oregon State. When you look at how these guys have done so far, what standouts do you have from me, Ryan? I know the walks have been an issue, but there's been some really good performances so far.
There's definitely been some really good performances. I think guys that have stood out to me. I mentioned Eric Segura already. Definitely a guy that's definitely stood out to me. Tevin Montgomery is another guy that stood out to me in a few relief appearances. Drew Talov, same thing as well. A lot of these like rotational guys too, just in their like innings of work. They've kind of been able to keep everything in front of them and not really give up a whole lot at times. There's been obviously, of course, the walks from this past series, but they'll only get better from there, and that experience and just will only help them as the season progresses, as we get closer to Pac-12 play. I don't think it's something to be too worried about right now. Sure, it's concerning, but like they'll cut down on those over time, and I think probably weather played a little bit of a small factor into there against North Dakota State with the off and on snow and rain and cold. So that's definitely like a few things to consider in that performance. But those guys in particular, like I mentioned, were guys that kind of really stood out to me in this rotation.
Yeah, I love that we're getting a lot of guys back too, and bringing all these new guys out there and giving them opportunities early. So it's going to keep building on this bullpen, right? Like, so we had a lot of freshmen last year who threw in that bullpen, doing it again a little bit this year, but you're also mixing in a lot of that experience stuff. I love where we're at there with this bullpen staff. I really do believe that it is one of the best in the country once they get going. Pat, who stood out for you so far with this deep, deep, deep bullpen?
I think within the bullpen pieces, there's so many that they can kind of rotate in and throughout. Kind of jumping off the page, I know he got it's kind of to go against the recency bias with Ian Lawson, but I thought that he looked really, really strong in his few appearances before, obviously, kind of the calamity that occurred on Thursday with the walks and the hit by pitch. But Joey Ment's been another guy that just having him back, a veteran presence that's been on this roster for feels like a really, really long time now. But having those guys around to kind of bolster, and then kind of how we've touched on this, the depth of them, and having, I think Mark, you said 15 guys earlier who had gone and thrown, just pairs so well with the starting rotation. Jacob Kamatz has pretty much given the Beavers a second Friday night guy. He has been completely lights out so far. 2-0. His current ERA is 0.64. And I know that, maybe that's not against the strongest of opponents, but he did have a pretty big start there in Arlington. If he can continue numbers in that stratosphere for the rest of the season or anywhere close to it, the Beavers pitching staff and bullpen are going to be set up in really, really strong positions for weekend series games, you name it.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that there's just so many guys who have stepped up. One that comes to mind for me also, Jaron Hunter, like just being like, hey, use me where you need me. Do you need me to throw a Tuesday game? You need me to throw a Sunday game? You need me to throw the Friday game? I'm game. Give me that opportunity. I'm ready to throw the ball. I'm ready to be that guy. He just really stands out to me as what it is to be a Beaver. Also, guys like Tyler Mejia and going there and saying Nelson Keljo, like, hey, limited innings so far, but those guys have the stuff to be really good. AJ Hutchison, he's been struggling a little bit, but I think he's going to be just fine down the stretch. There's just so many pieces to this bullpen and this staff that it feels like a wealth that we haven't had in years in Oregon State, right? We've gone to the same guys out of the bullpen every game, and now you're going, hey, I can throw him on a Friday. He doesn't have to throw the rest of the weekend. That's it. He just has to go out there and give me 6 outs. I'm good with that. It's very impressive to see, and I think Rich is right. I think there's just so many guys that have the opportunity to pitch that we're going to weed out the guys that are going to get that weekend opportunities and see who's going to be throwing on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays down the stretch. But really impressed so far with what the staff's done. The walks are a little concerning, but a sub-3 ERA is always good. We're going to be fine with that as far as pitching nationwide. All right. Pat, I'm gonna let you start here. Predictions for this upcoming series with Cal State Northridge. This is a very good team. They've won a lot of ball games so far early in the season.
Yeah, big thing I want to get off the bat is Beaver fans do not underestimate the CSUN team. They're on, I think it's either 8 or 9 game win streak. They really got things cooking since week 1. And this is a good ball club that maybe doesn't carry the name that some of these other teams that have come into Goss in the past have. But this is a nice little tune-up for Oregon State. I think if they kind of bring the same, I'd say, inaccuracies on the bump and things that they showed against North Dakota State this weekend, they could find themselves in deeper holes than they found, and that's including a 5-0 deficit to the Bisons. But I think they do go out and right the ship and take care of business. I think, fingers crossed, they get a little bit nicer weather out there for them at Goss Stadium, and they don't have to deal with the snow, the rain, the mid-40 temperatures. I turned the game on the other day and saw one pitch before it went to a rain delay. So just kind of one of those things. I think they get them in their element and they can kind of relax a little bit. Everybody else is playing a conference game for the most part, so you've got a kind of chance to take a deep breath, collect yourselves, and right the ship from what we saw this past weekend, which is crazy to say because they had a 4-game sweep.
Yeah, and it's tough when you have to pick things apart. And you're like, okay, well, they didn't really blow North Dakota State out. Well, they still won all 4 games. And in baseball, winning all
Yeah.
4 games really does matter. It is important to go out there and get those wins. And being 11-1 at this point in the season, it's just got to feel good if you're a Beaver fan. Be great to go get 3 more here against Cal State Northridge. But this team is not going to be a pushover. This is going to be a hard fought battle. This is a very good team. Ryan, any thoughts on this Cal State Northridge team? I know that we've talked about their 8-game winning streak, and they've gone out and beat some good teams this year.
Yeah, they've beat some really good teams, and that's definitely something not to scoff at. And too, that CSUN team can put up runs too at any given game. And so, if you give them mistakes, they'll take advantage of them. And I think if we see a similar type of series like we did against North Dakota State, that it could be harder to come back from those holes. I know the Beavers have that hitting power in lineup to come back from a 5-0 deficit, but you're not always going to get those opportunities. But I do think if it's nicer weather and getting that, at least that series under the belt, I think if they cut down on a lot of those mistakes, I think they handle business fine and nothing really to worry about heading into conference play at that point in time. But yeah, it's just really just looking back at last week, limit your mistakes from there and take care of business in a weekend where you're still in a non-conference game and your other opponents aren't. So that's your opportunity to take advantage of what you have presented in front of you starting Thursday to get on the right foot for Pac-12 play.
Yeah, and it's one more opportunity, right, for a lot of these guys to get some innings in and maybe get some at-bats before we get to conference play, and then it limits down to who's been performing. So these guys get one more opportunity, especially at home in front of the Goss faithful. It's just tremendous there to play at home. I know that people out here on the West Coast, we all know it, but there's people all over the country that don't understand how this is to play at home in front of those Beaver fans, and it's special. I know Tim Corbin from Vanderbilt. He said, "I haven't played a lot of SEC stadiums, but it's different out here," and he's 100% correct. It is a different stadium here. All right, final thoughts for me, Ryan.
Final thoughts. I mean, this team will only get better from here on out. I mean, I know Beaver fans have the expectation, it's national championship or bust every year. There will be always something to nitpick. But for me, I always look at it as like we have take the season week by week. Anything can happen. Anything can change. We know what the end goal is. What the end goal is. They have the capability to do it. It's just for them to put it all together over the course of the season and click right at the right point in time. And I think this squad definitely has it. And really for me, like those injuries are a little concerning, but like once those guys get back healthy, like Micah, Brady Casper, and then also to Aiden May, I think this team will definitely be in a great place to be right at the end of the season where they definitely think they can be. That's really for sure on there. It's still early. We got plenty of season left to go. But this team has showed both they can win using the long ball, they can win in a close game, and those type of experiences are going to be beneficial as the season progresses.
Absolutely, and as far as what I've heard and talking to guys, it feels like those injuries are minor. They're precautionary at this point to keep holding those guys out because they're not necessarily needed at this point to go out there and compete with these teams, and they'd rather have them for the long run. And it's a good call. Get these guys, some other guys, some innings. Get these guys some opportunities. I love it. Pat, any final thoughts before we head into the weekend?
Final thoughts for me is kind of touching on again the CSUN team. You know what you got in front of you. You know it's a good team. You know it's a hot team. Kind of like how Ryan just mentioned about teams hitting their stride at the right point. I think CSUN's a team right now that is hitting their stride. But something we all know the talent that this Beavers team has, and it's some of the best talent in the nation as team wide. But I think they've also got the focus down and they've got the mindset down. I don't know if YouTube was just giving me some kind of hidden signs or not, but one video rolled right into Game 2 of the 2007 College World Series today. So I ended up watching that today, and lots of focus on Mitch Canham in that video. So Mitch has been here. He's done it. he knows how to write this team and to go all the way to Omaha and achieve that end goal. So obviously getting hot at the right time is important, but being focused and having the right mindset is a huge piece of that. And I think this team is loaded and fully capable of doing that and performing late into the season.
Absolutely. This team feels like it's got that perfect mix of veterans and young guys that are hungry for this. And none of these guys have been to the College World Series. They're all waiting to go. And I feel like this might be the opportunity that Mitch has been waiting for with this kind of mix of this talent. And I'm just so excited for this season. Well, folks, thanks for joining us here today. Ryan Harlan, Pat Moen, and myself. We're going to be doing more of these Beaver talks that are from the Best Coast Pod directly. So thank you for joining us here on College Baseball Central. If you want to check out more stuff from College Baseball Central, we got all the conferences covered now. We got a Texas pod, we got an ACC, we got an SEC one starting up. And we got the Best Coast Pod. Go check out all of Ryan Harlan's stuff. Go check him out on Twitter, Orange Media Network, sports columnist and broadcaster. Thanks for joining us again. And let's go Beavs.
Let's go Beavs.
Go Beavs.